one of the things I'm finding is that people don't really understand or know about the Secure Act. They'll say something about, well, isn't there a 10-year thing or something? And, we make sure that in our college classes as well as our workshops that we define what that means. But basically, when you pass on and there's, the heir is a non-spouse, in most cases, that money has to be drained from the Roth or even an IRA within 10 years.
Well, the great wealth transfer is upon us. That is the transfer of potentially 70 to 90 trillion dollars from the baby boomer generation to their children and grandchildren and younger generation. What do you need to know about the great wealth transfer? How will you be impacted? And how can you transfer wealth as efficiently and effectively as possible? Will the money really end up where it's intended? We'll talk about it today on Protect and Grow Chicagoland Retirement with Chicagoland's certified financial planning professional, Tim Stearns, CFP, founder of TJ Stearns Inc., and of course, your host and our resource here on Protect and Grow. Tim, we hear a lot about this great wealth transfer. What are your initial thoughts? Are these dollars really going to transfer as we intend?
I don't know if that's really true. I mean, if you just kind of default to the IRS's methods, not all the money's going to get to where you want it to be. You and I always talk about this on here that, the IRS has a plan for your money just like you do. So if you're not careful, the money could evaporate basically because you didn't plan right. So we're talking to our clients a lot about different ways to kind of circumvent that legally, of course, but ways that we can get around having to pay all the dollars that the government needs and wants from us.
Well, baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. So, right now, hitting the crest of the period of time where the IRS tells them they have to distribute assets out of their retirement accounts. But when we talk about this great wealth transfer of 70 to 90 million dollars of value here, Tim, that encompasses those retirement accounts, but also cash, investments, real estate, family businesses, personal property, investment property. And the process has already begun, of course, but it's expected to accelerate as the baby boomers continue to age and then pass on their assets ultimately. What will actually happen with the wealth of one generation as it passes to the next? Will this be an economic boom or the transactions and transition happen smoothly? We will talk about that today on the program with Tim Stearns, CFP. And of course, always information you need to know here on the program, ladies and gentlemen, how to apply this to your specific situation to achieve your intended goals. If you would like to speak with a certified financial planning professional, give Tim Stearns and TJ Stearns Inc. a call, 800-640-2256. That's 800-640-2256. 800-640-2256. And most importantly, as we talk about this great wealth transfer, what hangups could be in the way and how do we get around them? So, Tim, this is a significant amount of money with profound potential economic implications. I think that there's probably several schools of thought on this, both from the currently holding generation of the baby boomers and their children and grandchildren, the Gen X, millennials, Gen Zs, and Ys, and whatnot. Talk about where you are hearing from your clients on their goals to transfer wealth generationally.
Well, it's funny. Some of them aren't really that concerned about it. The joke has been said here in this office many different times. I'd like to bounce my last check, but there are people that are big into the legacy part of it. And even if they don't want to be, like I said, the aforementioned, they're going to because the IRAs probably will still have money in them. And one of the things I'm finding is that people don't really understand or know about the Secure Act. They'll say something about, well, isn't there a 10-year thing or something? And, we make sure that in our college classes as well as our workshops that we define what that means. But basically, when you pass on and there's, the heir is a non-spouse, in most cases, that money has to be drained from the Roth or even an IRA within 10 years. The government wants to get their money as quick as they can, basically. So we need to take a look at that, what that will do to a person. That's one of the reasons we came up with our tax calculator, just to show people what happens if you start to do some Roth conversions now. We're hoping they pass that bill that is going to extend the current tax rates. But if they don't, this might be an opportunity that it shouldn't be missed by many. But yeah, to your point, back to it, is that there are a lot of people who are worried about a legacy, and there's so many different ways that the more efficient ways that you can give your money to your kids.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, on this program, that there are certain assets, there are certain asset classes that may be more impactful, maybe more effective and efficient to transfer wealth if something is going to be left behind. And Tim, the bottom line is that if we have planned for our own lasting, enduring, lifetime financial confidence, then more likely than not, something will be left behind for the next generation. And to your point there, in your last comment, my dad had a conversation with me quite some time ago that his intention was to bounce his last check. And I told him that was not a problem. Just make sure it was the last check that he needed to write.
Yeah,
You don't want to
right,
bounce that last one
right.
and then continue to need to have to write more and more. My attitude for my parents is go ahead and spend your money. Like it's yours, you earned it. I want them to spend and enjoy their money and don't really mind whatever's left over, but more likely than not, something will be left behind. I know there's another school of thought with the inheriting generation, though, as well. Some are counting down days till can be counting those dollars and sort of professional waiters waiting around for that money to be inherited. But I think there are some obstacles in the way there. So, can you talk about the school of thought of the inheriting generation? Like, are the younger generations ready for this wealth transfer?
I don't know if they are. I think a lot of them don't realize that, their parents were the first guinea pigs to a thing called a 401k. And with that comes taxes if you inherit it. And, in theory, some of these people, should have careers going, and any money that's added to them from a 401k and an IRA has never been taxed. And it's going to add on to their own taxable bill. So with that comes more taxes for them. And so what we try to do is show people, if you can talk to your families and that type of thing about what you're thinking to get the money to them more efficiently. There's different ideas that we have here, and we've gone over a lot of them in our past shows, but we should dive into a couple of them probably.
Well, I know that the Protect and Grow written retirement blueprint addresses many different aspects, not all of them encompassed in a traditional financial or even retirement planning model. The Protect and Grow Blueprint, very comprehensive dive into income, investments, taxes, healthcare, legacy, the legacy, of course, what we're talking about when we discuss this great wealth transfer. But you did mention the tax implications of this, the Secure Act, and that most people do not know how much they will pay in taxes. And remember, this baby boomer generation, in large part, has not even paid income tax on a good majority of their savings and investing yet, those tax deferred retirement accounts. So, ladies and gentlemen, in order to get a better handle on it, Tim mentioned the online retirement tax bill calculator. That is at NVPCFP.com. MVP, like most valuable professional, is your CFP, your certified financial planner. MVPCFP.com. And that's where you can go online. You can see the retirement tax bill calculator. But this wealth changing generations will have economic impacts, investing behaviors, charitable giving, the housing market, overall consumption patterns. But Tim, I think big things that could impact it is the money going to end up in the hands of the heirs and the beneficiaries, or is the great wealth transfer, in fact, going to be more of a transfer to the IRS and to the nursing home and nursing care facilities?
Well, so one of the ways that we are going to address that with our clients is by making sure that they have some permanent life insurance, whether it's through us or from someone else, but the type of permanent insurance that has, number one, long-term care benefits of some sort. A 7 out of 10 chance that they're going to need it in their lifetime. 9 out of 10 of them have probably not addressed that. So when you're taking these, one of the things that we've done is to take the RMD rescue route, which is to take the RMD out and put it into a life insurance plan that will be permanent, that will have long-term benefits. And then what I was going to say is number two, a tax-free disbursement to the heirs to pay all these different taxes that will be happening. And I think that that's, solves a lot of problems for people. We're doing that a lot. People are getting, edgy about realizing they haven't addressed that. And that's a big 800-pound gorilla to not address.
When you talk about taxes on an inheritance, Tim, there's kind of two classifications here. One that probably applies to a majority of people, and one that applies to maybe a much smaller segment of society. But when those accounts do transition generationally, you mentioned it, the Secure Act, the tax deferred accounts, income tax must be paid on those retirement accounts, the 401ks, the
Yep.
traditional IRAs, the tax deferred accounts. The IRS, even when you pass away and the money goes to the next generation, they'll never forget or forgive that debt that they allowed you to defer and delay and not pay the income tax. So that is due at that time. And that will need to be addressed and reconciled and paid by those beneficiaries. The smaller segment, Tim, is those that might encounter the estate tax. And
Right.
I know that estate tax levels are very high, but people need to start planning for this. I mean, it does not take a whole lot of investable assets on paper today to grow into a sizable amount over a 25 or 30-year retirement. So even if we're not in that description of wealth where we would encounter estate taxes today, there is a likelihood that if we've got significant assets, if they continue to grow, if we've got real estate or a family business, like we need to start planning for that estate tax.
Right. And one of the ways that we've done that is to maybe help our clients. We have an estate attorney on staff, but help them address that by maybe retitling things, gifting. The limit this year, I believe, is 19,000 per person, and you can get creative with that. So gifting is one of the ways to kind of spend down your estate. And then obviously life insurance. Life insurance will help with that. If you look at the wealthy people that we read about on TV, the Waltons that own Walmart, the Kennedy family, they have done all that, through the life insurance. That's how they've, kept the flagship going for them is by having tax-free tax-free life insurance going to them, to their heirs to keep the riches coming down the line. I don't think most Americans understand that that's how they did that, and we're educating people here. Our seminars are about taxes in a lot of cases. This is one of the ways that we address that.
I've heard a whole lot of our elected officials also utilize that as an asset class, which seems to me to indicate something that they know that we might not, Tim.
Right. And I think, most people, oh, I'm over 60, I don't need life insurance. Well, someone named Kennedy, over 65 years old, just bought another policy. And I think people don't realize what the wealthy are doing, and we should be copying them because obviously they're on to something.
Well, again, we are talking about the great wealth transfer, potentially 70 to 90 trillion dollars that is expected to change generations over the coming decades. And ladies and gentlemen, you are a part of this. We all are a part of this picture, and how it will impact society and the economy and spending habits of the older generation passing those assets versus the younger generations receiving those is yet to be seen. But there are ways to do this more efficiently and effectively. So if this is a goal, or you believe that there will be assets, value, or values left behind that you would like to make positive and impactful, pick up the phone and give Tim Stearns CFP a call. Have these conversations. Make sure that you are proactive. because otherwise the things may not happen as intended, and your wealth transfer may end up transferring to the IRS or the nursing care facility rather than your intended beneficiaries. The difference is effective planning, and you need a written protect and grow retirement blueprint to make sure that you are doing all of the best things to be efficient and effective, not only during your lifetime, but to leave that impact thereafter. And Tim Stearns does personalize and customize those blueprints for retirement at no cost to you, complimentary courtesy for listeners to this program. All you need to do to get the conversation started is give a call, 800-640-2256. That's 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. Tim, I think a strong indication that most of us have not done enough to address this issue is the lack of the necessary documents that we find. Even those basic legal planning documents seem to be overlooked, omitted, or just ignored and forgotten about altogether far, far too often.
I have many people in here that are highly educated come into the office and they say, "Yeah, I need to get to that," or "I should do a will," or "Oh, I already have a will. We're good." No, not necessarily. In most cases, around Illinois, you should probably have a trust as well for, at least your properties and that type of thing. So, those are the things that we're educating people about. And the reason why we're doing that is I was on the phone with a client the other day and their other advisor with a big name that's on TV all the time. And I said, we have to redo his paperwork over here for his life insurance because he had formed a trust. And she said, "Oh, well, we don't deal with life insurance. We just, do investments." And I'm thinking, you're a certified financial planner, you're a fiduciary, and you haven't addressed any of these things that I've done with your client. And I'm seeing that and I'm hearing that a lot more is that, basically these people are quasi money managers, and that's about where the door stops. They're not going anywhere else. And I think that that's something that, should be addressed if you're really fully financial planning for people. Life insurance is at least a rock you need to look underneath to see if they need it.
And when that is overlooked, who ultimately is impacted? Well, your children, your grandchildren, your
Right.
generations to come, your beneficiaries, and of course the money that they could have otherwise received. That if things are not done correctly, T's crossed, I's dotted the proper way, essentially is negligence and mishandled in the fact that we could have done more, we could have done better. But Tim, it's also just overlooked far too often. It's like the ostrich with the head buried in the sand. We all would love to pretend like we are Superman or Superwoman and that we'll never die and we'll never have healthcare events. But the reality is that 7 in 10 of us, according to the Department of Health and Human Services latest statistics, are going to need some amount of long-term care before the end of life. We've got to plan, we've got to prepare, and then we've got to do the legal documents to facilitate the transition efficiently, and document our wishes and our desires before it's too late. And too many people wait until it's too late.
Right. We just had someone in the other day who found out that their dad, who now has Alzheimer's, never put his condo in Florida or his house here in Illinois in the trust.
Hmm.
It was just an empty trust. So, that she's going through that. So make sure out there that if you have questions about legalities of how you're going to do things and that type of thing, our estate attorney can help with that. Our CPA can help with, how much you can, not be taxed with the state of Illinois being 4 million for each person in the house. If you are a widow or a widower, you can get there pretty quickly. But these are, when we tell people to give us a call, it's not just about investments. It's going to be about, what is going on in your world that you have not looked at? What is your blind spots? And it seems like so many people have these blind spots that they have no idea. And if that person who's quote unquote the money person in the relationship doesn't know it, well, the other person's not going to know it either.
Yeah.
And so we address those with people and make sure the protect and grow blueprint that they are protected and are growing their money.
Well, again, if you would like that protect and grow blueprint, personalized, customized to your situation and your goals, outlining the efficient strategies to help you achieve those, pick up the phone and give Tim Stearns, CFP, and TJ Stearns Inc. a call, 800-640-2256. That is 800-640-2256. 800-640-2256. I was listening to someone talk recently, Tim, who posed the question, what if your beneficiaries received a letter from the IRS, or what if you received a letter from the IRS stating that you had a 7 or 8 figure bill due within the next 10 years, or even a 7 or 8 figure bill due payable in cash within the next 9 months? Well, that would very quickly probably become the highest priority on anyone's list, that notice from
Yeah.
the IRS. And not many people are actually going to receive that letter, except that that is the reality after we pass on and our assets pass to the next generation. That next generation, there's going to be a lot of them receiving notices or having to plan for paying 6 or even 7 figures over a 10-year period of time to the IRS, or if we're encountering estate taxes, paying 7 or 8 figures payable in cash and due within 9 months. And for a lot of family businesses, that actually results in the sale and liquidation of the family business, Tim, if not planned for properly.
Right. And the big thing is uh looking into those blind spots. And we always say this on the show, you don't know what you don't know. And that's why people come to us, is to make sure that they are covered and that they don't have any blind spots anymore. Whether it be the trust that we can set up or the Roth conversions that we're doing with people. We just see so many people come in here that have a money manager, and that's where as they would say, the buck stops, right? And they don't have anything else with them, and they're not advising them on the taxation. That if I knew that my heirs were going to have to pay a huge tax bill, I mean, I'd probably start to get ahead of it while I'm alive. And I think people think, well, I got a will, I'm all set. They know where it goes after I die. Well, so does the IRS, and they'll follow the dollars. That's for sure.
Yeah. And there's a big difference, I think, in having the message soak in, Tim. If you say, hey, if you leave your children a large inheritance, do you mind if they pay the tax? And people are probably like, no, if I'm leaving them a lot of money, let them
Yeah,
deal with, versus, hey, do you want the IRS to be your largest beneficiary? Right.
right.
And that may be
It gets eyes opened.
yeah, an important distinction to make. So, estate planning with your professional team, asset titling, reviewing that, family meetings, open communication, regular planning reviews, looking at digital assets and legacy planning as well. And then, Tim, some of the important considerations: tax planning, business succession planning, charitable giving, and gifting to family members during your lifetime. These
Yep.
are effective strategies that are overlooked and underutilized.
Well, and one other one we haven't talked about, we make sure your beneficiaries are updated. We had a guy from the radio show years ago who came in here and he kept talking about how him and Judy were going to do this and they were going to do that. And I said to him, well, who's Mary? And he looked at me with these big eyes and he said, Mary's my first wife. How do you know her? I said, well, she's still the beneficiary on a lot of these documents unless you've updated them. And then his eyes got real big, if not bigger, to say, well, that's not how it should be.
Right.
I've never updated that. Good catch. So make sure your beneficiaries are updated, and that the people that you want to receive your money are going to get it.
And again, you need to map that out. You review those things regularly, ladies and gentlemen. You don't want
Right.
that kind of oversight and mistake. Give Tim Stearns, CFP, a call. He's happy to walk through that with you. He has helped many, many through this process of structuring a protect and grow blueprint for your own lasting retirement confidence, and then figuring out how to efficiently leave an impactful, positive legacy behind. 800-640-2256, the number to call. 800-640-2256. 800-640-2256. And Tim, not a recommendation of any type because we don't know any individual specific situation, but there are certain assets and asset classes that are more efficient to be left behind than others. You mentioned the Secure Act. Your retirement account, that IRA, that 401k, specifically probably not the most efficient asset class, one of the least efficient assets or asset classes to be left behind as an inheritance. But there are some that are much more efficient.
Well, with that, like an individual account, you can make a transfer on death, mark on it, where you're filling out one more piece of paper so that it doesn't have to go to your estate. It won't go through probate. A lot of people don't realize that retitling bank accounts so that, maybe your executor, which is a son or daughter, are on the accounts. These are the things that will make it smoother and that isn't being held up by the probate court or banks and that type of thing. We're seeing this a lot. People are getting, unfortunately, Alzheimer's, and their affairs aren't really in order, even though they thought they were. And the kids have stepped in now, and they're seeing that they're not. So those kids now are calling us to say, "Hey, we need to make sure our affairs are in order."
Yeah.
And it's a call to action for anyone out there. Make sure that you do have your accounts titled properly so that you don't have to worry about that. You don't need to leave your IRAs to a trust. You can just say, I want to leave it to John, Paul, and Joe, and the money will get there pretty quickly, in fact.
Appreciated investments in non-qualified
Oh
accounts with
yeah.
that stepped up cost basis, stocks,
Houses.
ETF, real estate, yeah,
Yep.
houses,
Yep.
primary residence or investment real estate.
Yep.
Roths are optimal compared to traditional tax deferred accounts, right, Tim? Life insurance proceeds, you mentioned and talked about that earlier. So again, a handful of asset classes that again, the wealthy understand and utilize can help more efficiently pass and transfer the value that they intend and not leave the IRS as our biggest beneficiary. So we have to plan accordingly, right? And the reality versus the expectation, well, it's talked about a lot here. The expectation is that 70 to 90 trillion dollars is going to transfer generationally over the next 20 or so years. However, the reality, Tim, is as you and I have talked about on this program, a good portion of those assets will likely unnecessarily transfer to the IRS and to the nursing homes, an estimated 40 to 60% of it. That is a scary fact, Tim. And a lot of that just results from lack of careful, conscientious planning.
We have so many people who come in here, they've worked their whole lives, and they've built a nice amount of wealth and that type of thing. And they need to be open-minded to the fact that there's other ways to solve these problems than how their parents did it. Like we said, the life insurance, things like that can, number one, you kill a lot of birds with one stone. Number one, you have the long-term care component. And number two, you have tax-free dollars going to, maybe it can help pay your estate. Maybe it can help pay the taxes on your 401ks and that type of thing. But either way, it's using leverage. And I know most of our listeners, especially on this radio station, WIND, they're smart about that. They know that they need to extrapolate their wealth, and that's a great way to do it. And they've leveraged everything their whole lives. Now it's time to leverage, on their legacy.
Well, your children, your grandchildren, ladies and gentlemen, your heirs and beneficiaries for generations to come, they certainly will have more challenges that they will face. Don't make the estate and the legacy one of those additional challenges. And over the next 10 to 20 to 30 years, there will be some success stories with this great wealth transfer, but there will also, unfortunately, be many, many more that are less than optimal, largely due to lack of knowledge, understanding, and planning. Plan carefully, be efficient. This great wealth transfer is an opportunity for both sides generationally, but make sure that you are leaving the impact that you desire. That's why a goal-oriented, personalized plan is so important, and that's exactly what Tim Stearns puts together. Your custom personalized blueprint for retirement, the Protect and Grow plan. If you would like to get that, pick up the phone, give a call, 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256, 800-640-2256. Tim, always a pleasure having you here on the program, talking about important topics. Thank you for being the resource.
Thanks, Peter. It's my pleasure. And give us a call if we can help you get your money transferred and not let the IRS take a big chunk.
Tune into Chicagoland's certified financial planner Tim Stern's full radio program and visit tjstearns.com for many valuable resources, including other great episodes of Chicagoland Retirement. Be sure to subscribe.
Investment advisory services offered through Cornerstone Securities, LLC. The information presented on this program is provided for informational purposes only without warranty of accuracy, completeness, or suitability for particular purpose. This program is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. This information is general in nature, not specific enough to be construed as advice. You should not make any decision based on the information presented on this program without independent consultation with an appropriately licensed professional or competent advisor. Investment in securities or the market involves a potential risk for loss of principal. Trading, therefore, may not be suitable for all listeners. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals of growth from annuities may be taxable as ordinary income in the year it is taken. Individuals should review contracts for specific details of the product's features and costs.